If you've ever noticed that you don't expect praise even when you've earned it, this might explain why. If you learn to handle things on your own, to not make a scene, to not ask for help unless it was absolutely necessary, you're not just independent. You were shaped that way. A lot of Gen X grew up without applause, no constant reassurance, no emotional check-ins, no one asking how you felt about everything. You were expected to manage, to adapt, to figure it out. And over time, that doesn't just become behavior. It becomes identity. Gen X was raised in a cultural gap. Many grew up with working parents, rising divorce rates, economic uncertainty, and a strong cultural message: be self-sufficient, don't complain, don't be dramatic, handle it. So you learned to ride your bike until the streetlights came on. You learned to make your own food. You learn not to expect anyone to clap when you did something well. And something subtle happens when a child grows up like that. They stop performing for praise. They start performing for survival. That's why many Gen X adults don't naturally self-promote. They don't chase validation loudly. They don't announce every win. It can even feel uncomfortable because attention wasn't something that felt safe. It wasn't encouraged. It wasn't consistently available. So the nervous system adapted. Stay steady. Stay competent. Stay low drama. You might notice it in small ways. Overthinking whether you're being too much. Downplaying achievements. Saying it's nothing when it wasn't nothing. Avoiding confrontation because conflict used to mean instability. Staying quiet in rooms where you actually have strong opinions. That's not passivity. That's pattern recognition. Your brain learned early that staying regulated and not drawing unnecessary attention was smart. And here's where it gets interesting. A lot of people think Gen X is emotionally detached. But that's not the real story. The real story is emotional self-containment. When you grow up without constant emotional mirroring, you don't stop having feelings. You just learn to process them internally. You don't expect someone to sit down and unpack them with you. So you become your own container. That can look like strength. And it is strength. But it can also create distance, because when you don't expect applause, you also don't expect comfort. When you learned early that no one was going to over-celebrate you, you stopped over-expressing yourself. You kept things balanced. Control. And control becomes a theme. Not control in a loud way. Not dominating. But internal control. Emotional control. Situational control. Many Gen X adults are hyper-aware of instability. They watch systems shift. They watched authority figures fail. They watch promises break. So they developed an identity built around reliability. I'll handle it. I won't fall apart. I won't need too much. That identity feels solid, but it also makes vulnerability complicated. Because if your role has always been the steady one, who are you when you're not steady? You can see it in relationships. Gen X often values loyalty deeply. They don't say it dramatically. They show it. They stay. They endure. But they may struggle to articulate needs in real time. Not because they don't have them, but because needing felt unfamiliar, or unsafe, or simply pointless. And here's the deeper layer most people miss: being raised without. Applause doesn't just create independence. It creates a quiet hunger for being seen without having to perform for it. That's why recognition, when it does come, can feel almost uncomfortable. There can be a reflex to deflect it, to joke it away, to minimize it. Because part of the identity says, I don't need that. But another part, often much younger, still registers the absence. This generation was told, directly or indirectly, that toughness was maturity, that emotions were private, that resilience meant silence. So Gen X became resilient, incredibly resilient. But resilience built without consistent affirmation often carries a shadow, self-doubt that doesn't show on the surface. It's subtle. It sounds like, I'll just handle it myself. It looks like staying competent even when overwhelmed. It feels like discomfort when someone tries to overpraise you, because your system didn't wire applause as normal. It wired stability as normal. And that shapes leadership style too. Many Gen X leaders don't micromanage. They don't hover. They expect autonomy, because that's how they were shaped. But they may also struggle to provide frequent affirmation because it wasn't modeled. Not out of coldness, out of familiarity. What makes this psychologically fascinating is that Gen X sits between two very different emotional climates. Raised with minimal validation, parenting in an era of hyper-validation, watching the cultural shift in real time. That can create internal tension. A quiet question of, was I supposed to need more? And at the same time, a quiet pride in not needing it. But the real pattern isn't about toughness, it's about adaptation. Children adapt to their emotional environments. If warmth is scarce, they don't collapse. They adjust. They become capable. They become observant. They become self-reliant. That's not emotional deficiency. That's intelligence. The phrase raised without applause doesn't mean unloved. It means uncelebrated. It means achievements were expected, not highlighted. It means survival skills were prioritized over emotional processing. And that leaves a psychological imprint. Gen X often carries a calm exterior that masks complex inner worlds. They're not less emotional. They're less demonstrative. They don't always announce what they're carrying, but they carry a lot. And once you start seeing this pattern, certain behaviors make more sense. The dry humor, the skepticism, the resistance to hype, the discomfort with oversharing, the instinct to fact-check before trusting. These aren't random personality quirks. They're products of an environment that rewarded self-sufficiency and punished excess, vulnerability. It was never about being low-maintenance. It was about becoming low-risk. Low-risk emotionally, low-risk socially, low-risk in chaotic systems. That's why Gen X often feels both grounded and slightly guarded. Warm but measured. Loyal but slow to fully open. Capable but quietly tired of always being capable. And here's the thing. None of that is weakness. It's protection that became personality. It's adaptation that became identity. When you grow up without applause, you don't crumble. You calibrate. You learn to clap for yourself quietly. You learn not to expect the room to notice. You learn to move forward without a soundtrack. But once you see the pattern, you realize it was never random. The independence, the restraint, the skepticism, the emotional self-containment. It all traces back to an environment that said, figure it out. And you did that understanding that doesn't change the past. It doesn't rewrite the conditioning, but it reframes the story. It explains why certain things feel natural, why certain things feel uncomfortable, why recognition can feel foreign even when it's deserved. Raised without applause doesn't mean invisible. It means internally anchored. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It just explains something you felt but never put into words. There's always more beneath the surface. Understanding the pattern is the beginning of understanding yourself.